بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا مولانا حبيب إله العالمين أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المؤمنين، ولعنة الله على القوم الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. الحمد لله الذي جعل المتمسكين بولاية السيد الأوصياء وإمام الأولياء وخليفة خاتم النبيين أستاذ الجبرائيل وناصر الأنبياء، من هو الأول، من هو الأوسط، من هو الآخر، من هو ابن أبو طالب أول ما نسير دين الإسلام في الأيام الأول، من هو ابن من هو أول ما دخل الكعبة الإيمان قبل الولادة الواحد في الزمان والمكان في كل الأيام ولادة في 13 رجب، من هو قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم اللهم أنت قصير النار والجنة. الحمد لله وباسم هذا الاسم المولى والسيدة عني وعندي وإليك كلهم إن شاء الله. فاتح بدر، فاتح أحد، فاتح خندق، فاتح خيبر، فاتح حنين، فاتح طائف، فاتح حديبية، فاتح اليوم معراج، وفاتح السفين ونحروان وجمل، وفي اليوم ذو الأشيرة من هو الأقام، وفي الليل الحجرة من هو في النوم، ومن هو اليوم المعراج. قال رسول الله أنا بمنزلتي عبد الله عز وجل وقاب قوسين أو أدنى، فعلي موجود في هذا اليوم. وفي اليوم المباهلة من هو نفس الرسول الكريم. هذا الإمام عندي وإليكم، وهذا إمام يعصوب الدين، وموجود في كل القرآن الكريم، أو في الكلام، في الاسم، في الإشارة، ووقت النزول وشأن النزول، موجود في بسم الله. فقال أنا نقطة بباء بسم الله. وموجود في مالك يوم الدين، فقال أنت قصير النار والجنة. وموجود في الحبل الله المتين وعروة الوثقى والإمام القرآن والعادل والعالم والراسخون في العلم والإمام في كل القرآن والأستاذ والنور السماوات والأرض. وموجود وين؟ والموجود في القرآن يا علي أنت إمام الأوصياء وإمام الأنبياء. We begin in the name of that Imam who we say is موجود in Quran, is موجود in this world, is موجود before we existed and after we exist. And the one who we say is Aynullah, Yadullah, Jambullah, Yadullah, Asadullah al-Ghalib, غالب لكل غالب علي بن أبي طالب. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Eid Ghadeer Mubarak to all of you. May Allah accept all of your a'mal, this ibadah we have been listening. Every second you are listening to the dhikr of Ali bin Abi Talib, may Allah wipe out every sin we have done for this dhikr inshallah. And if we are lucky and alive for the sake of this dhikr, then we live for every Ghadeer which comes in our life, we will be here inshallah. In the centers, in the masajid, or in Najaf al-Ashraf inshallah. The short message I wanted to give to all of you relates to one verse of Quran which was mentioned on the day of Ghadeer. Al-Yawm akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. This verse contains in it so many secrets, so much wisdom, so much guidance for all of us. And each time you read the verse, you read a new fadilat of Ali bin Abi Talib. And if we're going to celebrate Ghadeer and remember Ghadeer, we should always go back to that book where the Imam is mentioned continuously, which is the Quran. However you read this verse, you read a new fadilat of Ali bin Abi Talib. For example, if you stress on the first word, Al-Yawm, today, akmaltu lakum dinakum, today, the religion has been perfected and all of the favors of Allah have been complete today. This means not any day before, not any day after. Not the day in the cave when one was scared. Not the day in Saqifa when they chose the next leader. Not any day before or after until this day. Which day? The day when the sun is at its highest peak in a time of Hajj. Thousands of people have been told, come back to this area or come forward to this area of Ghadeer. Thousands. There are narrators standing in areas to relay every word the Prophet says. The narrator says there's 3 hours of khutbah which is delivered at that time. And in every line you read, there's another blessing of Ali ibn Abi Talib in this sermon. And on that day, when 12,000 went forward and were told to come back, and many were told to narrate exactly what said word for word in this speech on this sermon, the Prophet stands upon a heap of saddles of camels, saying that if I have not delivered this one message, I have delivered nothing to you. On this day, Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum, what does he say? Man kuntu mawla fahadun aliyun mawla. Al-Yawm, this day. Only now it's complete. Man kuntu mawla fahadun aliyun. Ali is the mawla. Okay. Now let's say you read the verse differently. Okay, what if I read Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum dinakum. So this day I have completed all my favors upon you, this deen, and I've completed my favors upon you. Okay, then this is the day of completion. This is the day when something has finished. Something which began long ago comes to its end point today. Okay? Every single thing which has a potential must fulfill that potential to become perfect. If you begin a class, you're not perfect until you graduate that class. If you start a family, you're not perfect until you have at least one child in that family. Perfection is fulfilling that which is already there but not yet done. So here's the question. What ended on Ghadeer began when? When did it begin? Did it begin with the beginning of the message of the Holy Prophet where he's teaching about Islam? Well, no. Because before the Prophet of Islam begins his mission and announces his prophethood, Ali ibn Abi Talib is supporting him from the beginning of his birth. So it must be something before. Okay, let's go back a little bit more. What about all of the Anbiya in Hijaz before? Maybe it began then with Abdul Muttalib, and before him Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Noor and all of them. They began something, and now Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum. It's finished. It's done. Okay, here's the problem. Ali ibn Abi Talib is present alongside every single one of those prophets' mission. He is Nasirul Anbiya. He helps the Anbiya. Every time there's an issue, they call on Ali. When Bibi Maryam is feeling the pangs of childhood, she calls on Ahlul Bayt. When Musa is going to speak to Allah at the fire of the burning bush, he remembers Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. When Yunus is in the whale, he remembers the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Every single prophet mentioned Ali. So they didn't begin it. They're simply continuing something more. Okay, we go back more. Maybe it was the first prophet, Adam, ala nabiyina. Maybe it was him. When Allah says to him, Ya Adam, look at the names, the asma, teach them. And when he sees the names, he sees, Hada Muhammad wa anta al-Mahmud, wa hada Ali wa anta al-Ali, wa hada al-Fatih wa anta al-Fatih al-Samawati wal-Ard. These are the names of Ahlul Bayt, with each name is a door to the names of Allah. So maybe it's this. Maybe what began on the day when Allah said, Adam, read, tell me these names. It finishes now when the name is Ali on the day of Ghadeer. But here's the problem. Before Adam learned these names, those names were still true and existing with the Malaika. They would pray to Allah, bihaqqi Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, before Adam. So you can't begin then. So where did it begin? Well, let's go back to the first possible moment where the Prophet says, أَوَّلُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ نُورِي. The first thing which Allah created was my Noor. And then, from that moment, my Noor split into two between my light and the light of my brother, one my wasi and my Khalifa, Ali ibn Abi Talib. And from then until the day of Ghadeer, those two lights of Noor have travelled from loin to loin, generation to generation, father to son, son to father, continuously, until they united for the first time after being split from that day in Abdul Muttalib. And then they split again. They split again, one half going to Abdullah, one half going to Abu Talib. And then we have the birth of the Holy Prophet and the birth of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And then, on this day of Ghadeer, he says, holding the hands of the one whom he is created from alongside him. Man kuntu mawla fahada aliyun mawla. Yani, if I am the first Noor, Ali is that Noor with me. And then from that moment, the life of things. But here's a good question. Where do these two Noors come together again? Inside the Fatima sallallahu alayhi. Because when those two unique, magnificent, shining lights of Isma unite, then we have Hassan and Hussein coming and being the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, continuing line after line of greatness until the Imam of our time, Sahaba Asl wa Zaman. So, Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum. Today it has been perfected. What began eons ago has been announced today. Maybe it's this. Okay, but let's keep reading. Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum Deenakum. Your deen. So let's read it again. Today, Al-Yawm Akmaltu has been perfected. Your religion and the completion of favors upon you. Okay, what if it's your faith? Imagine, what has happened to my deen on Ghadeer, which didn't happen before Ghadeer? Do I love Ali anymore? No, he has been present in Islam every single moment of this religion, from the beginning until the end. Whether it's the announcement of the Prophet, whether it's every battle which has been fought, whether it's every ta'arif, how we learn to pray, we look at Ali ibn Abi Talib, how we learn to go Hajj, we look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. So what changes on Ghadeer? Well, what changes on Ghadeer is we now have the name of Ali to link to this verse of Quran. No one can say, what's this verse about without going to Ghadeer? No one can say, tell me about this verse, who was it revealed for, when was it revealed? We have to go to the plains of Ghadeer to see the Prophet say, Man kuntu mawla fahada aliyun mawla. People ask. They ask things like, well, why is the Imam not mentioned in the Quran, for example? Why is he not there? Why do we have to go in this sideways way to see the ta'arif of the Imam? And the answer, of course, is that for the one who has love in their eyes, they only see Ziker of Ali in the Quran. Every verse you look at, you see him. I mentioned earlier, Hablullah al-Mateen, Urwatul Wuthqa. These are verses you see Ali ibn Abi Talib. راسخون في العلم أولي الأمر منكم Noor, Kaaba. All these things give indications back to the divine of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So here's an example. Our sixth Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, do you not understand that what Allah explains in the Quran needs to be explained further? For example, the Quran says, Aqimus Salah. But you learned from my grandfather, the Holy Prophet, how many rakat to pray when. Quran says, Yu'tuna zakat. Give zakat, but you learned from Rasulullah how much zakat to give and to whom. It says, so when the Quran says, إِنَّمَا وَلِيكُمُ اللَّهُ وَالرَّسُولُهُ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, that your wali after is Allah, and then the Prophet, and the one among authority among all of you, I'm telling you, this Ulul Amr minkum is my grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib. So now your whole deen changes because of the love of wilayah in your hearts. This deen is different. Lonely are the Muslims who don't have Eid al-Ghadeer. Empty are their homes. There's no light in their eyes anymore. Which Eid do they celebrate when we come here to remember Ali ibn Abi Talib? Which Eid is there other than Ghadeer on the day of Ghadeer? So your deen is complete with the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Okay, let's read the verse one more different way. Al-Yawm akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. And now I have completed my favors upon you. It's been completed, it's been finished. It's done. There is no more wahi, no more revelation, nothing more to come. Whatever was going to be revealed, baligh. Tell the people, Ya Rasulullah, you've done nothing unless you've said this message. But I'm interested in this last word. وَتَمَامَ ni'mati. This is my ni'mah upon you. And my ni'mah on you is not complete until you give this message. Our Imams have said there's no greater ni'mah than having love of Ahlul Bayt in your heart. No greater ni'mah. If you come and you say, well, maybe it's my wealth or my family, is any of that equal to muhabbat of Ali in your heart? Not for a second. No matter how much wealth we have or how much, how long our lives are, our employment, our jobs, none of these things come close to the blessing of love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. You could be poor like Abu Dhar, alone, eating straw on the ground, doing dhikr of Ali ibn Abi Talib and be the wealthiest person in the town. You don't need these things. But for me and you, there's a message here for Ghadeer, which I will end with, which is, we have to respect wilayah as a ni'mah, a true ni'mah. Not something I was born with by accident, Not something I remember when it comes to Muharram and these things. No, it's a ni'mah which is continuous in my lives. Before you were born, your mothers went to Najaf and prayed for you from the Imam. They did dua for the sake of Ahlul Bayt, give me a child. And when you were not yet born and your mothers were in pain, they would call on Ya Ali to help them through those 9 months. And when you were born, every mother would feed to their child the pure milk from the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then you grew. You grew and you lived your life and you grew older and older and you kept hearing stories of Ali, that one day he ripped the door of Khaybar and the child's eyes light up. He ripped the door of Khaybar, really? They have a new superhero, a role model to live up to. And you kept growing. And you went through difficulties in your life. You went through hardships and tests and heartbreaks. And every time you went through a hardship, you needed someone to help you through that journey. And you always turned back to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Either you heard some mention of him, some hadith, you said, Ya Ali, and those words gave you some strength. And every time you came to a deadline, you just said to yourself, Ya Ali, let me help me in this, and you got through it. Okay, then you grew, then you had a family, you got married, you had children, and you realized, I have not done anything for this child unless I teach them the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So you raised your children with this love. You took them to madrasa, you took them to different centers, you made them listen to lectures, you gave them books to give them this knowledge, because you knew that if you were to die at this very moment, as long as your child has Ali ibn Abi Talib, they're safe. Your line is mahfud. Nothing's going to happen to you, because when you're raised at the time when Allah Azza wa Jal, Ali is qasirun nari wal jannah. And the Prophet has said, Ya Ali, no munafiq can love you and no believer can hate you. So if you give your children wilayah, you know their deen and their akhirah has been secured. And there's one last thing you did. When you had this wilayah, you told your child that your Imam is Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's your Imam, Khalifatu bila fasl. You remember that. And one day prepare for the son of Ali today. You told your children, your Imam is not dead. Your Imam is not absent. Your Imam is not ghaib. Your Imam lives today. And the more love you have of your Imam, the closer you will connect to your Imam. And now your children grew with this hope that one day I want to be with my Imam because I love Ali. And I see in Ali my Imam who's yet to return. And now you gave them hope. And when you gave your child hope, you gave them strength. So whether you're there or not there, that child will get through any difficulty to try and reunite with their Imam. Name me a better ni'mah than this love. This love. So, al-yawm akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. Allah gave this ni'mah to you. And He asks you to pass it on. And every time we come for Ghadeer, we are passing on that same ni'mah for the next generation. And so I thank the previous generations of mine for giving me this ni'mah, and I promise to pass it on to the next generation, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا مولانا حبيب الله العالمين أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على القوم الظالمين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال الله الحكيم في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات الله محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل. So assalamu alaikum to all of you. It is a honor to be with you at this moment for this event. These are special days. These are special nights as well, which are coming up. And we are leading closer, of course, to Muharram, which is the topic of our discussion. But we cannot look past the fact that it's Eid Ghadeer. So Eid Mubarak to all of you. I'm praying the best for all of you, despite the dark setting that I'm in right now. I am in celebration mode. It's because we are filming podcasts for Muharram and lectures and things like that. So that's why I'm in this Muharram gear. But I have a Ghadeer mentality right now. So I'm so happy to be with you. And again, Eid Mubarak to all of you. I hope that you are celebrating. If you are doing ibadah or fasting, may Allah accept. If you are going for a meal, I don't know, with your family, whatever it is, may Allah accept all of these a'mal, inshallah. And again, thank you for having me in advance. Now, today, there are a couple of things I want to go through, especially in getting our mentality ready for Muharram, because it's close. It's so close. And there are some considerations which are so helpful to have at this time, because it sets into motion a series of goals which we can choose to go for and aim for if we decide to. right? Muharram comes and goes every year. And some people mourn for Abu Abdullah and they maybe learn one or two new things in the majalis or in the discussions. And then the next one comes around, and in between them, there isn't much growth or dedicated growth for the purpose of Muharram. But if you want, and if you choose this month, which is coming up and leading up to Arba'een and this period, it can be a source of immense growth. And already all of us are on our own journeys to Allah Azza wa Jal, but we can take from this moment great provision in our journeys. Like in any journey, if you're going from one place to another place, on your way, you have certain stops where you pick up what you need and you keep going and you leave certain things and you make trades and exchanges just to improve yourself to get to your goal. Now, you and I have one goal. إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ يَا الْإِنسَانِ إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ. You are working towards your Lord. So that's our goal. Ultimately, this world comes and goes and the pleasures come and go, and you and I, our worldly affairs can distract us, but ultimately our Rabb is our destination. قَدًا إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَمُلَاقِيهِ, and you have to meet him. That's coming. And there's no denying that. But how I go to God, how I look when I go to him, how I see him when I get to him, that's all on me. Whatever work I did or whatever efforts I took in this world, if I make the effort, I choose exactly in what form I go to him with. So I'll be asked, did you make advantage of the time that you had? Did you take provision on this journey? And then comes Muharram. Muharram, Imam al-Hussein, Abu Abdullah, this mission, this message, this eternal movement, this revolution, this reform which comes is provision for you and I on our journey to Allah Azza wa Jal, if we want to take it. So what I'd like to do today is speak a little bit about setting goals for Muharram and what it means and why we do that. And then I'll ask you, what are your goals? What do you want from this month? Okay. And now I'm speaking exactly to those who are in front of me. So I'm speaking to Sister Samina, I'm speaking to you, my dear brother Abul Qasim, I'm speaking to Sister Angeline, to Sister Fatima, to Sister Fihrish, to Sister Nabila, and Sister Saeed. I'm listening and thinking about all of you, and I'm curious to know what will be your observations. Salam alaikum to all of you individually, by the way. I thank you for your time. All of those names that I mentioned, I really thank you for giving me this time. But let's dive into it. Okay. If you think about Muharram and the Majlis, historically, this institution which exists since the death of Abu Abdullah, which is coming up so soon, so soon, it is composed of two components. Okay. One of them is known as Shu'ara, one of them is known as Shura. These two things. Shu'ara and Shura. Shura, coming from Shur, is the mourning. It's the crying for Abu Abdullah. It's the matam, the marsiya, the masaib, the salam, the swords, these parts of the thing, the poetry, the crying for Imam al-Hussein. It is mourning. Historically, Majlis was just this. There wasn't really much of a lecture in the early records of the Majalis. You had the Maqtal, the record of what actually happened on the day of Ashura. And we have a certain primary sources which demonstrate what happened in that time. And we have scholars who would sometimes read the Masaib, or poets who would then recite poetry for Abu Abdullah, and they'd gather together and they'd mourn for him. There wasn't a lecture in the 10 days of Muharram. There wasn't a program or a series that we have now. This came much later. There was just mourning for Imam al-Hussein. Okay? We have rewards of the tears for Imam al-Hussein, gathering for Abu Abdullah, the one who recites poetry for Imam al-Hussein. These narrations which exist in our sources are so old, and they're specified as their own thing. So, for example, Sheikh Abbas Qummi, one of our old primary scholars, our great scholars, records the rewards for Muharram, and almost all of them are related to mourning and weeping in his book, Nafas al-Mahmum. Okay. Similarly, we have certain books, really old books, which are just having the story of Ashura, what happened, facts. And people would listen to them and they would just cry for Imam al-Hussein. So we have, for example, Maqtal Abu Mikhnaf, one of the oldest books of Maqatil that we have. And this book, which is still used today, contains the history of Abu Abdullah, of the day of Ashura. And there are other books too. And more contemporary books like Maqtal Abdul Razak, and new books coming out now, which are translations of other books. And a few others, which contain the story of Imam al-Hussein. And back then they would just read it and they'd mourn for it. Similarly in Karbala today, have a look. Every Ashura, one of the main things, and alhamdulillah, I've been there twice for Ashura in Karbala, and I pray for all of us and for me, inshallah, that we can go quite soon. Maybe not this Muharram, I'm not able to, but inshallah soon. And for all of you, I pray you can. They read the Maqtal. And for that reason, in other centers, they read the Maqtal on the day of Ashura, word for word, to mourn, to cry. But that all of that is just one half. It's just one part. There is more to this institution, which is other than just mourning for Imam al-Hussein. Okay? Of that which is more, um, for Abu Abdullah, there is shu'ara. This is the education which comes with it. Now, this is the other side of why we come together to mourn, to remember the message, to teach each other, to remind each other of Islam. We're already coming together. And why do we call ulama and scholars? Because they have done research. They're not just people who make us cry and tell us sad stories. They are able to teach the religion to us. And historically, as people gather together to mourn, they would ask questions like, why are we mourning? Why are we not joining this movement? Why are we not joining this action? And they would need to explain these things. What is our creed? What is imamat? What is Shi'ism? So we have to discuss these things. What about the 12th Imam? How does mourning for Abu Abdullah link to the Imam of our time, which is a very, very important issue? And slowly, increasingly, the 12th Imam became a subject at the majlis. And poetry was done to remember our Imam, Imam Zamana, as the one who upright and avenge Abu Abdullah. So as you can see, gradually, Madras is expanding. And now we have a whole nother side to it: education, knowledge, intellectual development. And this nowadays has increased to much more. Now we discuss all sorts of interesting and important topics on the mimbar of Imam al-Hussein. So it's normal, for example, to discuss things like, you know, is which types of music is halal, which type of music is haram, fiqh issues, or how to deal with issues like family issues, like husband and wife, not working together, divorce, children issues, development. These are now being discussed. We can expand even further. What's our role in politics, in society? What do I owe my imam in my current community right now? These are all belonging to the message of Abu Abdullah. But only more recently, as time has gone on, especially since the revolution in Iran in 1979, have we had a chance to expand the second half of it, right? Which is the education side. So now when you go to a majlis, you have two. You maybe start with the fadail or the discussion, and then you end with the masaib. In some communities, they start with the musiba, the na'i, and maybe they'll end with the discussion, some sort of bahath on some Islamic issue. Like they're different cultures, but they have both. What I would like to put to all of you is you and I should be setting ourselves targets for both of these things. Personal targets. What do I want from this month of Muharram coming up, or this period of Muharram? I keep saying month because it's Shahr Ramadan. We say month, 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 but no, this is longer than one. It's 10 days, or it's 2 months and 8 days. The time extends. But what do I want from it, and what am I going to take from it? When you and I go to school or in university, they always start with what's the objectives of this lesson. Every book, the introduction says what is in this book. What are you going to take from it? If you're joining a job, you have targets for your employment to judge yourself by after a period of time. That did you meet those targets? It's so normal. Why are we not taking ourselves seriously to set the same kind of approach to have targets for Muharram? So this then leads, so like we get where we are at, right? We have to set targets. We want to take it seriously. And there are two big potentials for us: mourning for Imam al-Hussein and learning. I would like to encourage all of you to set yourself some sort of individual target for both of these things, either more than one or multiple ones, related to the mourning side of things and the education side of things. It might be easy, right, to think that I want to take something which I take every year. I want to attend a majalis. Well, you attend majalis all the time. You need to go further. Or maybe you already have a goal or something which you're working on already and you're struggling with it. I'm not able to read Ziyarat Ashura every day. Okay, well, here comes Muharram to be a booster on your way to make that a habit for you. Or I'm not able to, my prayer is suffering. Okay, it's fine. It does happen. Now use Imam al-Hussein to improve this thing for his sake. And when you leave the period of Muharram and Arba'in, like you fix that, at least that one issue you fixed. Like set a target, which is hard, which you're not able to do right now. I'd like to make a few suggestions. And if you agree, you can think about this and you can perhaps implement it in your own life. Okay. What are my targets when it comes to shu'ara, meaning the education side of things? What do I want to learn? So let me ask all of you this question. In your understanding of Islam in general, as broad as you go, is there an area which you wish you could learn more about? Which, whenever these discussions come up, you're like, I wish I could learn more about this issue. Like, it's so cool. I just want to learn more about it. I want to learn more about this field of knowledge. Do you have something like that? This is a great platform if you wish to share, inshallah, about a field of knowledge which you do want to increase. Does anyone have an example like that?
Hi.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Angeline.
Walaikum salam. I think maybe like Irfan or mysticism. That's quite interesting. Sister Fatima said the origins of certain duas.
Mm. Well, these are two very different things. So
Yeah,
let's go with one. So firstly, when it comes to Irfan and mysticism, so that's something you're personally interested in, right?
yeah,
And
spirituality.
yes, are there certain books or scholars that you heard or you read somewhere where you thought, I want to learn more about this, like this journey of yours? Where have you found it so far?
Um, Mostly like reading about figures who did specialize in it, like Alama Tabatabai and Ayatollah Behjat and things like that.
So that's great. So you've already got to where I was going to say, like, you got to find a role model, la, 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 but you've already found it. So you know that there are individuals who have walked this path already, who have walked on the path which is known as sayr and suluk, and they've got to a certain stage of ma'rifah of Allah Azza wa Jal, where they're able to come back and teach it to the people, right? Mullah Sadra, one of our great scholars in our history who taught a lot about Irfan, he believed in the Asfar, Al-Arba, the four journeys which the mystic goes through. And one of those journeys is once they get the truth, they have to come back to the people and teach it. They have to. They go for the first three stages, but the fourth one is to come back. And if we believe this, there are some scholars who have walked this path and can teach it to us. Agha Behjat, you mentioned. Allama Tabatabai, you mentioned. We have good books in English of other Arafa as well, and documentaries of Agha Behjat, but also The Shining Sun of Allama Tabatabai is a good book. Said Hashim Haddad there's a book about him. He was a very important mystic. Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai, the teacher of Agha Behjat, another one. And if I give a shout out to my podcast, we discussed this in my podcast as well, actually. There's an episode coming up on how we reform the soul. And it's coming up in 10 days of Muharram with two scholars who are experts in Irfan. So I would really like, inshallah, you to watch this episode, inshallah. But that's the point. We find resources which are useful for this inquiry. Now, what I suggest you, Sister Angeline, is consider to yourself exactly what you're interested in. Is it history? Is it people? Is it figures? Is it practices? Because Irfan can be theory and practice. They're two fields of knowledge. Is it Irfan from Ahlul Bayt? Is it Irfan from Sufi thinkers? Is it Irfan from non-Islamic thing, which is there? Like, these are all interesting discussions. Find out what you're interested in. And then it's a matter of making certain targets and trying to gain knowledge with them. So find your interest, then the resources and the targets. I'm going to listen to these 10 lectures and I'm going to take notes and I'm going to listen to all of them, or I'm going to read about this scholar. And then you can start to build your understanding so much so, inshallah, sister, that at the end of the 10 days or 40 days, whatever your time limit is, you can look back and see exactly what you have done in your journey. And then the next step will open up to you, inshallah. Anything unclear with that?
No, some solid advice.
Okay, good luck, inshallah. We
Thank you.
are praying for you, and hopefully you make success, inshallah, in this part of the journey. Sister, can I address Sister Fatima's point? Is it okay if I address this point?
Yeah.
So the origin of certain dua, a really important point, Sister Fatima. And Assalamu alaikum to you, by the way. Super important, especially now when there's a lot of controversy about different du'as. Some people are saying we cannot find the chain for this du'a, or we don't know where in our books it's found, and it's becoming a debate. And some people are suffering because I have talked to God in the language of certain du'as that someone's now telling me was never even said by Ahl al-Bayt. What about all the progress I'm trying to make? What about the way that it touches my heart? What about the relationship I built with du'a nudba or du'a tawassul? And now someone's telling me that's not authentic. So I need to go on my own journey to learn about these du'as and where they are from. So Sister Fatima, what you will find of all of the times to have that debate now, that discussion is inherently linked with different groups who have different points of view about where we get certain du'as from. So I encourage you to look at scholars who've looked at Mafatih al-Jinan, for example, to see where exactly did the respected sheikh find the different sources for them. And find out for yourself which individual du'as are you interested in, because there's so many and they're found in so many sources. Are they du'as which are attributed to Ahlul Bayt, which come from after the time of Ahlul Bayt? Like, when did they come from? And then you research those specific du'as to know the chain of them. This will then lead naturally to a discussion of rijal, and you'll be looking at the history of the scholars who have passed down that particular du'a in a chain, attributing back to Ahlul Bayt. And this might lead you to consult experts or read the works of experts on the matter of history and rijal. So Sheikh Subhani, for example, Sheikh Ayatollah Ja'far Subhani, or Ayatollah Arwani, for example, they have written about these topics. And what you are going to see, I'm going to warn you, Sister Fatima, is scholars with completely different points of view, and speakers and contemporary reciters and institutions, some of which might say these du'as are important, a part of our deen, and they're central to our creed. And others who might say that there's no, because we don't have a certain historical paradigm where they come from, we need to discard them. They're very radical, positions, some of them. And you have to choose. You have to choose. What is your approach? What works for you? How do you talk to God? And how do you incorporate these du'as in your own journey? And like we began by saying, we all of us are on a path to Allah Azza wa Jal. Are you going to go to God speaking the words of Ahl al-Bayt or the words of someone else? And like I said, it's a journey. So best of luck to you, inshallah. Sister Father, does that address this particular goal of yours? Is there anything which you wanted to add to that point, or is it clear? My pleasure, inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Habibi, Abul Qasim, what is your goal?
Yeah. So, oh, sorry. 1 second. My mom was calling me. I'll say my point and then I'll pick up
No,
the phone.
if it's your mother, then like I cannot be responsible for taking it away from her. You can speak to
No,
her.
it's okay. She's at a Ghadeer event actually. I stayed home to attend this online to watch you. I wanted to listen. So yeah, my thing is, I know like different like stories and events that happened, and I know the general gist of Muharram and so on. Like as you all have, but I want to like go through the details and like read the conversations and really feel the atmosphere of exactly what words were said, what kind of things happened. Yeah, that's my goal.
A really good book on this. The Journey of Imam Hussein from Medina to Karbala in his own words. Do you have this book?
No.
It's somewhere behind me. I don't know where.
Okay.
I don't know where, but have a look at this book. It's called something like The Journey of Imam Hussein from Medina to Karbala in his own words. It's a compilation. I think the Islamic College, Islamic Center did this compilation. Here's why it's good. It's all the words of Abu Abdullah. Everything he's attributed to have said from the moment he leaves his home until his last moment on the last moment that he's recorded to say, from that final dua where he talks to Allah in the most intimate and beautiful way, from the beginning where he's told he has to give bay'ah to Yazid or he has no choice. And then you can see not only his journey, but how he relates to his journey. Like, what does he think about his journey? Because it's his words, it's not mine or yours.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
his word. It's his sermon at Hajj, it's his dua at Arafah, and you can start to piece it together in chronology. So you can see his own ideas develop as he's going on, and the quality of the people around him develop as well. So have a look at this work, inshallah. And I mentioned the books of Maqtal, like have a look at them too, because those are some of them that are translated in English and they are literally our sources. So Maqtal Abu Mikhnaf is a really important one because it's one of our most relied upon ones. But it's very small because the earliest, Sister Angeline, do we have time to continue or is it 8 o'clock coming? Is it okay if I continue? I don't want to get like cut off immediately. But what I was saying was, this particular book, Maqtal Abu Mikhnaf, it's short because most of the detail which comes later. It's not from the early accounts, right? Because it wasn't possible at that time. Then look at a book called Maqtal for Abdul Razak. Okay, this one has so much more detail. It has poetry. It's used in the house as well, and you're gonna find yourself reading things that you've heard ulama mention on the minbar. Like, oh, that's where they got it from.
Yeah.
So read this
Okay.
book of Maqtal Abdul Razak. And there are others too, but start with these two so you can see how the Maqtal literature grows. But first, start with the book I mentioned, right? The Journey from Hussein from Medina to Karbala. Go through that journey. I would even encourage reading it through the 10 days of Muharram because you can like build yourself while the days are progressing. So you yourself are moving with Imam al-Hussein towards all things go. So good luck with that, inshallah. Was there anyone else who wanted to add something or ask something about their own goal or share what their goal is going to be? Please can you repeat the name of the second book? Sister Fatima, it is Maqtal Abdul Razak al-Muqarram. So Maqtal, like M-A-Q-T-A-L, and then Abdul Razak al-Muqarram. I can probably find a P. Sister Fatima, are you related to Said Ali by chance? Like, maybe not, but are you? Because then I can send it to him and he can get it to you. Just because I saw the surname and I thought maybe. You're a sister. Okay, mashallah. Mashallah. You are the sister of my brother. Okay, in that case, I will send him any resources and then he can no doubt get it to you. But Maqtal Abdul Razak is a really good place to start, definitely. And there are others too. Send your slams to my slams to your brother, inshallah. Great. Are there any other questions about goals that you might be setting to anyone? I want to make one last point. Can I, sister? Do I have time? Because I know we said 8 o'clock, but is it okay if I make a quick
Yeah,
point?
of course, of course.
So half of it is goals relating to this, like education, but the other half is goals related to mourning. Now, we should also ask ourselves, what are my goals when it comes to mourning for Abu Abdullah? Now, some people think to cry for Imam Hussein is limited to the literal feeling of grief, right? That's not entirely accurate. Mourning for Abu Abdullah is inherently linked to action. Here's the best example, Sayyidah Zainab sallallahu alayha. For her, the way she mourns for Abu Abdullah was to not leave behind wilayat after him. She mourned for him by standing for him in Kufa, in Sham, back when she returned to Karbala, in Medina, her whole life. Imam Sajjad, for him to mourn for Abu Abdullah after everything which happened to Imam Sajjad, not just to cry. It was to use his tears to teach people about dua and their huquq in the Book of Rights, Risalat al-Huquq. Like it came into action. And that's what I want to encourage to all of you. Your mourning should not stop with crying for Abu Abdullah. Your mourning should motivate you to do something for him, to do some project for him. So if you're mourning for Hazrat Ali Asghar alayhi salam, that it's not, it hurts the heart that this oppression happened to a child. Okay, what can we do for the children of our community or in the world in general who are malnourished? If we mourn that Abu Abdullah did not have water, what about so many drink water campaigns around the world I can support? Or I mourn that Abu Abdullah, his blood was shed unjustly on the plains of Karbala. Can I give blood? Can I donate blood? Are there blood drives I can go to? Abu Abdullah was taken away from his home and he had no home left. Can I help those people in my community who don't have a home anymore? Abu Abdullah was literally made to travel away from his place, looking as a stranger in a new land. What about those refugees who are strangers in this land who I can try to help? Imam Hussein cared for his family so much. What about families today who are struggling, either if they are in, messy family issues or areas with domestic abuse or areas with trauma? How can I help those people in my community for the sake of Abu Abdullah? Do you see? Our tears do not stop in the centers. Our tears motivate our arms and our legs to work for Abu Abdullah. I believe there was a soup kitchen or a food bank in Blackburn which you can support, inshallah. And I'm sure there are other projects like that which you can find interesting, especially if you're in an ABSOC. For those of you in Ahl Bayt Society, there are so many cool things happening in the universities that you can become attached to. You can link your ABSOC to. I've seen it happen all the time. Right now, I'm working with all the ABSOCs for the Nahj Balagha book club, which happens every week, and it's students all around the country in ABSOCs, and they feedback on projects they're working on, and they are using the platform of the Ahl Bayt Society and of Abu Abdullah and who is Hussein and these platforms to attach themselves to important social movements. Things like going on protests when there's oppression in Palestine, or things like supporting environmentalism. All these things, they take inspiration from Abu Abdullah. We should be doing these things. We should be doing these things. If we are doing justice to our tears, they deserve to be manifested in some amal, some action. So I encourage all of you. This part I can't ask because it's a more complicated thing. Come together in groups and contemplate on how we can do some actions and which projects to support based on our understanding of Abu Abdullah. Whether you have something local, amazing. If it's national, good. If it's global, inshallah, contribute. But make a difference. Make a difference, inshallah, for Abu Abdullah, so your tears live and breathe as they are designed to, inshallah. But that's it. So that was what I wanted to say to you. Set yourself goals. Inshallah, take it seriously. And I pray that everyone listening all of you can set your own goals. You meet them. And I wish you all the best in your journey. And please pray for me in mine, inshallah.